The defense looks really good for Oklahoma. Texas really struggled early in this game. They did get it going late, so I feel like the slow start was what really cost Texas in this game. So for Texas, I think it's tough because they're a 21.5-point favorite this week against Kansas. I lean Kansas, even though I'm still very high on this Texas team. I think Texas's dreams are crushed. I mean, they can't go to the college football playoff. That's out. But, I mean, it depends on how high that was on their goal list. A Big 12 title game still in the works for them if they beat Oklahoma. But let's go to see how this team responds. With Sam Ehlinger there, though, I think this team will respond well. And I think Texas is going to be a different team next year with Sam Ehlinger senior season. I think Texas next year is going to be an exciting team, but I'm sure they're going to get all the hype in the offseason. Houston outgained Cincinnati, who was in a major letdown spot after upsetting Central Florida. They were outgained by 30 yards in this game, but were fortunate enough for Houston to turn the ball over 5 times. Cincinnati now a 17.5-point favorite against Tulsa, a team that just nearly upset SMU, but got crushed by Navy. I think it's too many points. I think Tulsa can bounce back and keep that close. So I think that that's a little bit of an overreaction. So we're definitely selling high on Cincinnati at this point, and literally back-to-back games, they could have lost. They were outgained by Central Florida. Central Florida played very poorly in the red zone for Cincinnati to hold on. So Cincinnati maybe is getting a little too much love right now in the market. BYU did not play that bad, losing 23-27 on the road to South Florida without their star quarterback, Zach Wilson, who remains out. They also lost their backup quarterback in this game, Hall, who's questionable for the Boise game. BYU actually plus 124 yards in that game, plus 9 first downs, and plus 1 turnover. South Florida had 11 penalties for 105 yards. So, how the hell did BYU lose this game? Here it is right here. BYU went 0 for 3 on 4th down. Boise, 6.5-point favorite at BYU this week with 71% of the tickets on the early going on Boise. If Hall's back at quarterback, I think BYU is the play. There's no way Boise should be a power rated higher than Washington and USC, who were smaller road favorites at BYU. I lean BYU. South Florida is on my fade list still, despite winning and covering their last 2 games. This week, 14-point dog on the road against a hot Navy team. So I don't know if it's the right week to fade them. I really don't like backing service academies as large favorites, so probably going to lay off that game as well. Wake Forest lost to Louisville, so maybe we're fortunate here. Louisville, we gave out Louisville late, plus 7. They gave up a ton of yards in this game. They were lucky that their special teams really took over. Not saying that, it was misleading, really. I mentioned my handicap when I gave out Louisville as a play that this weekend there was a major advantage in special teams, as Wake Forest ranks 116th. Louisville ranks 24th. So pay attention to that moving forward. Louisville's defense gave up 668 yards in this game. They lost another quarterback. Cunningham got banged up again in this one. So both their starter and backup are questionable for the Clemson game. Clemson a 24-point favorite, and I honestly think they roll. I'm kicking myself for not betting them last week. Wake Forest has a bigger game against Florida State, and they're just 2-point favorites, so I needed to dig deeper on that game. I know Wake Forest also lost their quarterback, Newman, in that game, but honestly, if this spread is 2 points because of their backup quarterback, there's literally no drop-off between Newman and Sam Hartman, in my opinion. Leaning Wake this week. Some other games and notes that I wanted to get to. There's 4 or 5 games here that I think are worth mentioning. But if you're just tuning into this podcast, let me just remind you.
Subscribe to Freddy's Premium Sports Picks newsletter. Free at FreddyWills.com.
Again, 4-2-1 on the season, back-to-back weeks with winners with Florida 2 weeks ago over Auburn, and then Tennessee plus 7, getting the outright upset as well. So having a good season with the newsletter play. We also one this past week with the Air Force as our free play. So make sure you subscribe to that newsletter. Also up on the website, again, $99 pro and college football, guaranteed profit this week or 2 weeks for free. So make sure you check that out. We're going to keep that package rolling as we go for our 6th straight winning week. We're up over 50% during that time period. And you get all of my max play of the days. My max play of the days, 90 and 59 against the spread over my last 149 between college and pro. That dates back to 2015. Just been on a roll with those plays. And that includes, I had a 10-game stretch, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, no, 9-game stretch in October to November last year where I lost 10 in a row between college and pro. No, 9 in a row. Actually, let me go back a page here. I lost 10 in a row. Yeah, I'm still over 60% over my last 150 max play of the days. So that just gives you an indication how well I've done. I've won 14 in a row back in 2016. So really that's the difference right there between. But I've been pretty consistent this year, 5-0 in NFL, and 1-1 in actually 1-2 in college. So and Iowa this past week I thought was a tough loss. I mean they go for 2 there. They would have gotten it. We would have covered. So the turnovers really cost them in that game, and the missed field goal earlier in the game. And they have an excellent kicker. I was shocked he missed that. It's like a 44-yard field goal that he should have hit. Anyways, moving on. Michigan versus Illinois. Interesting. Michigan got out to a 28-0 lead, but Illinois fought back and pulled within 3 points early in the fourth quarter before Michigan put them away for 2 touchdowns. Honestly, I think that if anything, that's probably given us value in this Penn State game because people are going to look at the final score and be like, what the hell is wrong with and there is still a lot wrong with Michigan. Don't get me wrong. I just don't think Penn State's that good. But they just have such a major home field advantage there with the whiteout playing night games that there's no way I can have a ticket on Michigan this week. I don't think, at least. And if anything, maybe teasing Penn State. But if it gets to 9, I don't think I can do that either. This is just another red flag for Michigan, in my opinion, against a bad Illinois team. Now they go on the road to face Penn State, a team, again, I said I'm not high on, but I don't know. Maybe Michigan just kind of, we're up 28-0. This is Illinois. We're not giving them much credit. Let's just kind of get healthy and get ready for next week. Illinois gave up 295 yards rushing to Michigan, so it was good to see them get the running game going. Illinois is facing Wisconsin this week, 31-point dog. Wisconsin could probably name the score there. Vanderbilt, this is a big one, lost to a bad UNLV team. This is not a misleading report. This was not on the misleading report because they just got their asses beat. I thought we would have a higher spread this week with a hot Missouri team coming to town, but we don't. 21 points is a lot, but Vanderbilt just seems worn out at this point, and I don't think I could back them right now, even though I think we are getting tremendous value with them as a 21-point dog against Missouri. I typically do like to back those Power 5 teams after they lose to a Group of 5 team. Typically you can back them for weeks moving forward. But Vanderbilt's defense, they have a defensive coach, has not been very good for a couple years now. I don't know what to say. And their offense has been, not good at all. So, Missouri could go in there and win by 4 touchdowns. That wouldn't surprise me at all. Fresno State remains on my fade list, mainly because they've won over 19 games. They won 20 games against the spread the last 2 years. And it's only happened like 6 times. I mentioned this in my free pick last week. So you can go on to freddywills.com/records and find the Air Force play, and you can find the full analysis. Again, that's another thing that differentiates me from other handicappers is the fact that, all my picks get released a minute after a game starts. It's up on freddywills.com. it gets released to Twitter, although I did have some issues this past week with my feed kicking over to there automatically, so I get that straightened out. But yeah, every pick gets released over there, timestamped, archived forever. You can get my entire record history, over 10 years of data with a click of a button. Nothing's hidden. There's not many handicappers out there that give you that information. So, definitely check it out at freddywills.com. Army got their butts kicked by Western Kentucky, who has a good run defense. That was really the difference in the game because Army only 137 yards rushing. Yeah, I want to see how Army bounces back from losing back-to-back weeks. I think that they will have some value later in the season when they're dogs, which they certainly will be at Air Force in 2 weeks. That game I have circled. I'm very interested to see what that spread is when we get there. Because I still think Army is better than Air Force. And I do think Army will be an underdog in that game, possibly over 3 points like Navy was. Iowa outgained Penn State. We talked about this game a little bit. This was my play of the day. Very bummed out about it. Iowa did outgain Penn State. So this was close to making my misleading finals report. I didn't want to be a little bit biased since Iowa was my play of the day. Iowa struggled every time they got on Penn State's side of the field. And for the second week in a row, turnovers were the reason Iowa lost the game. -2 turnovers in the game. They outplayed Penn State. Otherwise, they did outplay Penn State. Penn State did look like the better team throughout, I would say. Like, it was close. I thought Iowa benefited from some of the calls from the refs. A bit lopsided. Penn State was flagged 8 times for 80 yards. Iowa just 1 penalty. Other than that, I couldn't take much from the game. Iowa now hosts a beat-up Purdue team as an 18-point favorite. I think that's too many points for an Iowa team that just is a very slow team. Penn State, we mentioned, 8.5-point favorite at home against Michigan at night in a likely whiteout. Iowa, though, I mean, they probably need the Purdue game. I don't think they're a team that really has hangovers just based on where they're from and the culture there at Iowa and the head coaching staff. I just don't think that after a big loss they're gonna turn in the rest of the season. So I don't really look at that. I just more or less want to see the health of Purdue, but probably not playing that game at all. Notre Dame took care of USC, but look, USC got the backdoor cover. This was a pretty clean game. Notre Dame only outgained USC by 47 yards. But Notre Dame did lead for most of the game by double digits. USC made it interesting late. Clay Helton finally covered a game as a dog, now 4-14 against the spread of his career. USC back at home facing Arizona as a 9.5-point favorite. To me, that's just too many points. While Notre Dame gets the week off before going to Michigan and what should be a good game. I can only hope Michigan gets lucky and maybe beats Penn State unless I'm holding a Penn State ticket so we can fade Michigan next week. I've bet on Michigan. But big games, I just can't do it anymore with Jim Harbaugh. And this team looks like his worst that he's had the last few years. Just in the trenches, they have not played well. So I'm looking forward to probably fading them at some point the rest of the season. So that wraps up today's podcast. Didn't have as much great information on today's podcast as I wanted, but I'll get some other good stuff later in the week out to you guys. Thanks for listening and good luck. And let's hope for another winning week this week. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Freddy Wills College Football Betting Podcast. If you are still listening to this podcast, you are really into college football betting. And if you are really into college football betting, you should consider following my premium plays, especially my play of the days, which have hit roughly 60% against the spread over my 10-year career. If you aren't into paying for picks, that's totally fine. There are many reasons why I wouldn't even want you to, especially if you don't have the bankroll. In that case, you may want to consider visiting sportsbetcapping.com for free picks from over 70 handicapping experts. That's sportsbetcapping.com for access to free picks on all major sports. Thanks again for listening to this podcast, and as a reminder, please leave 5-star reviews on iTunes and take advantage of my premium pick newsletter absolutely free at freddywills.com.